A scale hangs in the dark. On one side, a single feather. On the other, a human heart, still wet. A jackal-headed god watches the beam. Behind him, a thing with a crocodile's jaws waits to eat what fails. This is the last room. Every man in Egypt ends here, in the dark, with his heart on the scale. The slave who ground your grain, the soldier who burned your village, the god-king who wore the double crown. The feather does not care what they wore. You are about to walk every step from the bottom of this world to the top of it. And you are going to end exactly where everyone ends. Level 1, the slave. You are not from here. You wake in a column of bodies roped at the neck, walking north out of the desert. And the rope is the only thing holding the column together, because half of you can no longer remember why you keep walking. You came from the south, from a village above the cataracts, in the land the Egyptians call Cush. There were date palms there. There was a river that was the same river, but felt like a different one. The soldiers came at the dry season. They came in the early light when the cattle were still lying down, and by the time the sun was full, there was no village, only smoke, and a line of people roped together and counted. You were counted. That is the first thing this world does to you. It counts you. Your sister is somewhere ahead in the line. You can see the back of her head when the column turns. You have stopped saying her name out loud because the soldiers laugh at the sound of it, so you say it inside, once an hour, like a stone you keep in your mouth so you do not forget you have a tongue. The march takes weeks. People die on the rope and are cut loose and left, and the column does not slow, because the column belongs to a quota, and the quota does not grieve. You arrive at a place of stone, the eastern hills, where the gold is. They put a basket on your back and a stone hammer in your hand, and they point at the rock, and that is the entirety of your instruction. You break rock. You carry rock to where men with sharper tools crush it. You carry the crushed rock to where it is washed. And somewhere at the end of all that breaking and carrying and washing, there are a few grains of yellow metal that no one here will ever touch again, that go north in a sealed sack to a temple you will never see, to lie on the chest of a god you will never meet. The heat is a hand pressing on the back of your neck. The water comes once, warm, in a clay jar passed down the line, and you learn to drink without seeming to drink, so the man behind you does not take your share. Men do not last here. You watch them stop. A man simply puts down his basket and sits, and no one comes to make him stand, because a man sitting in this place is already finished, and the overseer would rather not waste a stick on the finished. You learn the first rule of this world in the Gold Hills, and the rule is this: you are livestock that talks. You eat what keeps livestock working. You are worth the labor left in your arms, and not one breath more. You hold one thing back, inside your mouth, the stone, your sister's name. You decide, in the dark, that you will live long enough to find her, and that decision is the only thing in this world that belongs to you, and not to them. And then, on a ration day, the overseer watches your hands move. He sees that they are quick, and that they do not shake. He says something to the scribe who counts the baskets, and the scribe makes a mark. You do not know yet that a mark from a scribe can move a body across this world. You think you have nothing left to lose. You don't. Not yet. Level 2. The farmer. The mark moves you north. You are not free. No one says the word free. No one hands you a paper. But you are taken off the rock and given to an estate on the river. And on the river, a body that can work without dying is more useful planting than breaking stone. They give you a hut. They give you a strip of black earth. They give you, after a season, a woman from the village, whose own people are gone the way yours are gone, and the two of you become a household, because a household is a unit the scribes can tax, and the scribes prefer you in units. This is what passes for rising in this world. You went from a thing that is killed by the work to a thing that is kept alive by the work. You feel the difference in your bones, and you are almost grateful. And the gratitude is the first lie the system teaches you to tell yourself. The river runs everything. You learn its 3 faces. When the river floods, they call it Akhet, the inundation. The black water comes up over the fields and you cannot farm, so the state takes your body instead. This is the corvée. You owe Egypt your back during the flood, and Egypt spends it on dikes and canals and, in the worst years, on hauling stone for a tomb you will never enter. You stand thigh-deep in mud moving baskets, and the men beside you are farmers like you, And none of you are slaves, and none of you are free. And the difference stops mattering when your spine is the tool. When the water goes down, parrot, you plant. You walk the dark, wet earth scattering seed, and you drive the animals across to press it in. And for a few months the work is yours, and the green comes up out of the mud like a promise. When the grain is high and gold, Shemu, you harvest, and you learn the third face of this world, and his name is the scribe. He comes with a stick and a roll of papyrus, and 2 men behind him. He measures your field, he measures your grain. He writes, and what he writes is what you owe, and what you owe goes to the granary of the estate, and the estate belongs to a temple or a noble or the king. It does not matter which, because they all eat from the same stack, and the stack is always counted before you eat from what is left. One year the river comes up wrong, too low. The black water does not reach the high fields, and the high fields turn to dust, and the grain does not come. But the scribe comes anyway, because the scribe's quota does not bend to the river. You watch a man 2 huts down who cannot pay, get bent over a post and beaten in front of his children. And the beating is not cruelty exactly. The beating is arithmetic. It is the system showing the village what a deficit looks like. You pay. You always pay. You eat less and you pay. And your woman eats less than you and says nothing. And the child she carries does not come to anything. And you bury something small at the edge of the field, and you do not have words for it, because in this world a thing that small is not yet counted as a loss. The stone in your mouth has a new name in it now, but you keep saying the old one too. Your sister, north of here, in a great house, grinding someone's grain. You believe this the way you believe in the river. You have no proof. You need it to be true. You are good with the grain. You are good with the counting of it. The scribe who taxes your field notices, the way the overseer in the hills noticed, because in this world being noticed is the only door. And the scribe says, the temple is short of boys who can hold their numbers. Can you hold your numbers? You can. You learned them watching him. He makes a mark. You think this one lifts you toward the light. In a way it does. That is the trick of it. Level 3. The tomb artisan. They send you to a village with no fields. It sits on the desert edge, on the far side of the river from the great temples, a tight little knot of whitewashed houses against bare cliffs. And there is no green anywhere, because the men here do not farm. They are kept. The state feeds this village out of its own granaries so that the men inside it can do one thing, the most secret thing in Egypt. They cut and paint the tombs of the kings. The Egyptians call the place of truth. The men are servants of the place of truth. You start at the bottom of the crew, carrying water and lamp oil, but you can read your numbers, and soon enough, you can read more than numbers. Because in this village, a strange thing is true, that is true almost nowhere else in Egypt. A great many of the men can read. In a country where maybe 1 or 2 people in 100 can read at all, you have walked into the one village where letters are ordinary, and you drink it down like the warm water in the gold hills, in secret, fast, before anyone can take your share. You learn the work. You learn the 10-day week, 8 days in the tombs, 2 days of rest, then back. You learn to climb down into the cut rock in the great place, the valley where the kings are buried, with a wick burning in a dish of oil and salt so it does not smoke and ruin the paint. You learn to swing the copper chisel into limestone in a heat that has no wind in it, deep in the ground, where the only sounds are the chisels and the breathing and the small voice of the man beside you naming the colors he will lay down tomorrow. You are building eternity. You are cutting the house a god will live in forever. And you go home at the end of the 8 days to a mud brick house of 3 rooms, and you wait for the grain. Because here is the cost, and it is the cost that teaches you the most. You do not grow your food. You are paid it. Ration day. The grain comes from the state. For an ordinary workman, something like 4 sacks of emmer wheat and a sack and a half of barley in a month. Enough for your household with a little over to trade. The chief workman gets more. The water carrier gets less. Every mouth in the village is fed by a delivery that comes from outside, and you do not control the delivery. And then, one season, the delivery does not come. You are deep in the king's tomb when the word passes down. The grain is late. Not lost, late. The granaries upriver are full. Everyone knows they are full. The grain simply has not walked the last distance to your village, because somewhere an official is busy, or careless, or skimming, or all three. Your children are hungry. The whole village's children are hungry. And the men who are building the king's road to the afterlife sit down in the dirt and refuse to lift the chisel. You strike. You march to the temple gates and you sit. And the cry that goes up is the most dangerous sentence in Egypt, because it says the quiet thing out loud. We are hungry. You are the most skilled workers in the kingdom. You build the immortality of a living God, and you are sitting in the dust shouting that you have not been fed. And it works. The grain comes. That is the lesson. And it is a double-edged one. And you carry both edges out of the village for the rest of your life. The first edge, the system can be made to move, if the men inside it sit down together. The second edge, sharper. The system was always able to feed you and simply did not, until you forced it, which means it can stop feeding you anytime it likes. And the only thing standing between you and the gold hills again is whether you are too useful to starve. You become very, very useful. Your letters get cleaner. A scribe of the tomb, the man who keeps the village's accounts, who records the rations and the absences and the births and the disputes, takes you on to help with the writing. You sit beside him, and you learn that the man with the pen is not building the tomb at all. The man with the pen is building the record, and the record is what survives. You decide you would rather be the record than the wall. A mark, again. This time you make it yourself. Level 4. The scribe. To become a scribe, you go back to being a boy. You sit in a schoolroom and you copy. You copy the same lines 1,000 times, on broken bits of pottery because papyrus is too dear to waste on a learner, and the lines you copy are not kind. They are propaganda, and you know they are propaganda, and you copy them anyway until you believe them. They are called the satire of the trades, and they are a long sneer at every kind of work that is not this one. The farmer is wretched. The fisherman stinks. The metal worker has fingers like a crocodile's hide. The soldier dies far from home and is carried back like a sack. You read that the scribe does not pay tax. You read that the scribe does not carry baskets. You read that the scribe's name is spoken after he is dead. His name is spoken after he is dead. You feel that one land in you like a hook, because you have buried something nameless at the edge of a field, and you have left men nameless on a rope in the desert, and you have started to understand that in this world, the cruelest poverty is not hunger. It is to die uncounted, to go into the dust and have no one write you down. You learn to write. You learn hieroglyphs for the stone and the cursive hand for the everyday, and you learn the thing the writing is actually for, which is not poetry and is not prayer. It is the granary. It is the field. It is the count. And then they hand you the stick. You stand in a gold field at harvest with 2 men behind you, and you measure the grain of a farmer whose back is bent, and whose woman stands in the door of the hut not looking at you, and you write what he owes, and what you write is law. You are the scribe now. You are the third face of the river. You are the man you watched come to your own field, and there is a farmer 2 huts down who cannot pay, and you give the order, and your men bend him over the post. You do not enjoy it. That is not the cost. The cost is that you do it, and your hand is steady, and afterward you eat your good bread and you sleep. And the boy who once said his sister's name once an hour to keep from forgetting he had a tongue, that boy is harder to find inside you now. You have to reach further for him. You have a pleated linen kilt and a wig and kohl around your eyes and oil on your skin, and when you catch your reflection in the temple pool you see one of them, and the strange thing, the thing you will never say to anyone, is that you are relieved. You measure other men's grain for years. You are good at it. You are exact. And exactness is its own kind of power, because the man who is exact is the man who cannot be blamed. And in Egypt, the thing every official fears more than hunger is blame. A temple notices your accounts. A great temple. The house of Amun at Thebes. The richest landowner in the kingdom after the king himself. Owner of fields and herds and gold and ships. A power so large it is starting to frighten the palace. They need clean hands and a clean pen inside the temple estate. They take you in. You think you are walking into the house of God. You are walking into the treasury. Level 5. The priest. A priest does not pray the way you imagined a priest prays. Before dawn you purify yourself. You shave your whole body, head, brows, every hair, because the God will not be served by anything unclean. And you wash in the sacred pool until your skin is cold, and you put on white linen so fine you can see the lamp through it. and you walk into the temple while the rest of the city sleeps. You go through halls that get darker and smaller and more secret as you go in, until you reach a sealed door at the heart of the stone, and behind that door, in a shrine no farmer will ever see, is the god. Not the idea of the god, the statue, gold and precious wood, dressed and jeweled, and your task, your daily, literal task, is to wake him. You break the clay seal on his shrine, you bow, you bathe the statue, you dress him in fresh linen, you set food before him, bread, beer, meat, the best of everything, and incense climbs in the dark, and you perform the rite that holds the cosmos in its place. Because that is the theology of this whole world, the one belief under all the others. There is order, called Ma'at, and there is chaos, and the gods and the king and the rites hold Ma'at against the dark, and if the rites stop, the sun does not rise and the river does not flood and everything ends. You believe it. And you also, now, from the inside, know exactly how it is made. You know the food set before the god is not eaten by the god. After the rite, the offerings are taken back out and redistributed, to the priests, to the staff, by rank. You eat the god's lunch. The whole temple does. The system has a beautiful closed logic. The peasant's grain comes to the temple as tax and offering, is laid before the god, and is handed back down to the men who serve the god, and the peasant is fed his own grain's shadow in the form of order, of a flood that comes, of a world that holds. You administer the estate. This is most of the work, and it is the work no farmer imagines when he bows at the temple gate. The temple of Amun owns staggering wealth, fields beyond counting, tens of thousands of head of cattle, gold, ships, whole towns. You count it, you move it. You sit in cool stone rooms while outside, in a bad year. The same farmers you once stood beside go hungry, and the granary you guard is full. And you have learned by now exactly what a full granary beside a hungry village means, because you struck against it once with a chisel in your hand. This is the cost at this rank, and it is quieter than the lash and it is heavier. You perform truth for a living. You stand in white linen and embody Ma'at, order, justice, the rightness of the world. And you know the gap between the right and the granary, between the order you perform and the hunger you administer. And you keep the gap a secret, because the gap is the system, and you are the system now. You stop saying your sister's name. You notice the day you notice you have stopped. You are 40, or near it. You are a priest of Amun. You have not thought of the rope or the gold hills in a long time, and the not thinking is the most expensive thing you own. The temple is power, and power in Egypt is never only spiritual. The high priests and the palace eye each other across the river. Factions form, and a man who can count, who is clean, who is exact and cannot be blamed, is useful to more than the god. The palace is building. The king is always building. His temple, his tomb, his eternity, and the works need overseers who can manage men and grain and stone at scale. You are summoned across the river. You think you are going up. You are. That is what is so terrible about it. Level 6. The officer. But the works are not the only place a sharp man rises. And Egypt in these years is an empire. And an empire is built on the army. And the army is the fastest ladder of all for a man with nerve. You take it. The new kingdom army is not a mob of conscripts. There is a professional corps now. Disciplined infantry, archers, and above all the chariotry, the shock arm, the prestige arm. 2 men to a light cart pulled by a pair of horses, a driver and a fighter, the most expensive killing machine in the world. You start as a scribe of the army. Every army runs on counting too. But you can ride, and you are not soft. And the difference between a clerk and an officer in this army is sometimes only the willingness to stand in the line when the line is hit. You stand in the line. The campaign goes south first, into Kush, into the land you came from, and you do not let yourself feel the road. You are an officer of Egypt now. You burn villages above the cataracts the way a village above the cataracts was burned for you, and you tell yourself it is order. It is Ma'at. It is the holding back of chaos, and the telling works, mostly, because by now you are very good at telling yourself things. Then north, the great campaigns, the ones the temple walls will boast of for 1,000 years. You ride in the dust behind the king's chariot, at places whose names become legend. The fortified hill, where Egypt traps a coalition of kings and the army grows so fat on the loot it almost loses the victory. The great chaotic clash by the river to the north. Thousands of chariots in a single field, where the king is nearly cut off and rides out of the trap, and then carves the story into half the temples in the land. You are in the dust at the edge of these. You bleed. You see men opened up and screaming for water in a language you don't know, and you learn that a battlefield smells like a slaughter yard, and a privy, and a forge, all at once, in the heat. And you are decorated. The king's reward for valor is gold, actual gold, worn at the throat, the gold of honor, fly-shaped pendants for the men who would not break. You stand in a line of officers and a man who is a god lays gold on your neck, and the crowd roars, and for 1 hour, you are everything the satire of the trades promised. Clean, dry, free, named, gilded. And then they bring up the captives. This is the cost, and it walks toward you on a rope. A column of prisoners, roped at the neck, counted, marched south toward Egypt, and the mines, and the great houses, and the temple estates. You stand in your gold and you watch them pass, and you do the arithmetic you have spent your whole life learning to do, and the arithmetic is this. A portion of these will go to the gold hills and not last a year. A portion will be handed to estates and become units the scribes can tax. The girls will go to grind grain in houses they will never own. And in the line, you will tell yourself it was not really her, that it could not have been, that it was only a face the right age, a woman from the right country with the right tired set to her shoulders. In the line you see your sister's face. You do not stop the column. You are not even sure it is allowed to be her. You are an officer of Egypt, and the column belongs to a quota, and the quota does not grieve. You stand in your gold, and you let her pass, because to step out of the line and into the dirt and put your hand on that rope would unmake everything you have climbed, and you have climbed so far, and you have eaten so much of the god's lunch, and somewhere along the way the boy who kept her name in his mouth like a stone became a man who keeps gold at his throat instead. You let her pass. That is the rank. That is what it costs. Not your life. Your life is golden now. It costs you the last thing the rope in the desert could not take, which was the one true reason you decided to live. The king's eye is on you. A man of proven nerve, clean accounts, useful in war and useful in peace, with no faction he loves too much. Such a man is exactly what the palace wants close. You are given an estate. You are made an overseer of works, then a governor, then more. You are lifted out of the army and into the great smooth machinery of the state. You do not feel it as a reward. You feel it as a current. The system has decided to carry you, and the thing about being carried by this system is that you stop being able to feel your own legs. Level 7. The noble. You have a house now with a garden in it. Think about that, where you started. A garden. Walled, green, watered by hand against the desert, with a rectangular pool of clean water at its center, and fish in the pool, and ducks on it, and a sycamore for shade. And at evening you sit by the pool with cool beer, and your wife in a fine linen sheath dress, with a cone of scented fat melting in her wig. And there are musicians, a harp and a flute and a girl shaking a sistrum, and the walls of the house are painted with this exact scene, so that the good evening will repeat itself forever, even after you are dead. You are a noble, you are an overseer, a governor, a man with a long string of titles that you have carved onto a stone in your tomb, because the tomb is the great project of your life now. You are cutting it into the western cliffs, the same western cliffs, in fact, where a younger you once swung a chisel into a king's tomb for late rations. You have hired men from that very village to cut and paint yours. The world is small at the top, and you do not let yourself notice how small. You commission your false door, the stone doorway through which your spirit will come and go to receive offerings forever. You commission the scenes. You hunting birds in the marsh, you inspecting your herds, you receiving tribute, you at the banquet by the pool. You commission, above all, your autobiography, carved in the clean monumental script, a long account of what a just man you were, how you fed the hungry in the lean years, gave bread to the starving, clothes to the naked, how you spoke truth, and did ma'at, and never took what was not yours. You did not feed the hungry in the lean years. You guarded the granary while they went without. You know which of the two stories is true, and you know which one is going on the wall, and you understand at last what the autobiographies are. They are not records, they are spells. They are a man arguing his case to eternity in advance. Because every man in Egypt knows what is waiting in the last room, and every man would rather face the scale with his good story already written in stone. Behind your beautiful house, out of sight of the painted pool, there is a back court where grain is ground for your household, and it is ground by women who do not own the quern or the grain or their own days, and you do not look at their faces. You learned not to look at faces in a chariot's dust years ago. You are a kind master, you tell yourself, by the standards of masters. You do not work them to death. You feed them. They are units, and you keep your units well, the way a careful man keeps his cattle, and you do not let the thought finish itself, the thought that one of those bent backs has the right age and the right country to be a woman you once let pass on a rope. Here is the cost at this rank, and it is the strangest one yet, because from the outside it looks like the absence of cost. You have everything, and having everything has made you afraid in a way the Gold Hills never made you afraid, because in the Gold Hills you had nothing to lose, and now you have all of it, and all of it can be taken in an afternoon. A bad flood, a famine, a whisper in the wrong ear, a king who dies, and a new king who wants new men, and the estate is reassigned, the titles erased, the tomb left unfinished and uninscribed, the name chiseled out. You have watched it happen to better men. You lie awake in your painted house counting the ways down, and there are more ways down from here than there ever were up from the bottom. You are exact. You are blameless. You are loyal past the point of having any self left to be disloyal with. And so when the highest office in the land below the king himself falls open, the office of the man who runs everything, who hears everything, who is the eyes and the ears and the tongue of the God-King, the king reaches for the man who can be trusted because he has nothing left that is his own. He reaches for you. You take the office. Of course you take it. There has never been a moment in your whole long climb when you took the dirt over the height. That is what the system selected for. The whole way up. That is why you are the one still climbing while 1,000 better men are dust. Level 8. The Vizier. The Vizier of Egypt does not rest. There is a text carved in the tomb of one of the great viziers that lays out the office. And it is not a boast. It is a warning, written as a job. The vizier is the pillar that holds up the whole house, the man to whom every report comes, who sits in judgment, who hears the petitions, who supervises the granaries and the levies and the building and the law, who must be even, when being even costs him everything, who must not show favor to his own kin, who is bitter to no one without cause, and feared by all. You are that man now. Your day starts before light and does not end. You sit in the hall of judgment with the rolls of the law spread before you. 40 leather scrolls, it is said, the law of the land at your right hand. And the petitioners come, the high and the low, and you hear them, and you decide. And what you decide is what happens, because you are the buffer between the God-King and the whole churning mass of the human world, and the king does not want to hear the human world. The king wants Ma'at maintained, and the details kept off his throne. So the details come to you. The tax disputes, the boundary stones moved in the night, the corrupt official skimming a granary, the man who killed another man, the woman petitioning for her inheritance. And you note, with the part of you that still notices things, that the women of this land have rights that surprise you, that a woman can hold property, and make contracts, and stand in your court, and end a marriage, that the system is crueler, and stranger, and less simple than the satire of the trades ever let on. And you send men to the mines. That is the thing you cannot get used to, and you stop trying to. A man is brought before you, guilty, and you have the power of the king's justice, and the sentence is the eastern desert, the Gold Hills, the rock and the basket and the warm jar pass down the line. You sign it. You sign a man into the exact pit you crawled out of, and you do it because the law is the law, and Ma'at is order, and order requires that the guilty go down so the world stays up. And also you do it because by now signing is simply what your hand does. Your hand has been signing other men's fates since the first gold field. It is very good at it. It does not shake. The cost at this rank is total exposure. You are the second man in the world. And the second man in the world is the most dangerous job in the world, because there is exactly one position above you, and an entire kingdom of ambition below you, and everyone who wants to rise has to come through you or over you. You cannot trust the men who flatter you, and you cannot ignore the men who do not. You manage the high priests of Amun, whose temple is now so rich and so powerful, it is a rival state inside the state. And you manage the generals, who have armies, and you manage the king's own household, which is a snake pit of wives and sons and succession. You hold it all in balance. You are, literally, the keeper of the balance. And you know that the day you let one weight slip, every faction you have ever crossed will be at your tomb, with chisels to scrape your name off the wall and feed it to the dust. You are utterly alone. Your wife is a stranger you sleep beside. Your sons are positioning themselves. The only thing in the world that is fully on your side is the king, and the king is a god, and a god is not a friend. And then the king is murdered. It does not come from a battlefield or a border. It comes from inside the painted house. There is a conspiracy in the royal harem, a secondary wife who wants her own son on the throne instead of the chosen heir, and a web of officials and household staff drawn in, magic and poison and bribery, and a plan to kill the living god in his own home. And it succeeds, at least at its center. The god king's throat is opened in his own palace by the people closest to him. You sit on the tribunal that judges them. You, the vizier, the keeper of Ma'at, sit in judgment on the men and women who killed a god, and the sentences come down: death, forced suicide, mutilation, names changed to curses so they will be tormented for eternity. And you understand, fully, finally, sitting there, that you have reached the place where the air is thin enough to kill kings, and that no height in this world is safe, because the higher you go, the closer you stand to the one knife that matters. There is one rank above you. You have spent your entire life, from a rope in the desert to this tribunal, climbing toward it. And now, in the bloody confusion after a god has died, the way to it opens, through marriage, through regency, through the simple fact that you are the one man left standing who knows how to make the whole machine run. You climb the last step. You should have stopped on the rope. Level 9. The Pharaoh. They put the double crown on your head. White for the south, red for the north, joined into one. And with it, the crook and the flail crossed on your chest. The shepherd's hook and the goad. To gather and to drive. They put the false beard on your chin. The plaited divine beard that no living man grows. Because you are not a living man anymore. You are Horus. You are the son of Ra. You are the living incarnation of Ma'at on the earth, the single point on which the whole cosmos balances, and every rite you saw performed from below, every temple you administered, every granary you guarded, all of it, the entire machine of Egypt, exists to do one thing, and that thing is to be you. You are the apex. There is no mark above you. No scribe to lift you higher, no rope, no rank. You are the top of the world, and you have never been this afraid in your life, because you know what is under you. You have been under you, the whole way up. You know the granaries are full and the villages go hungry. You know the autobiographies are spells, not truth. You know the gold of valor is paid in roped columns, and the order you embody is held in place by sticks across bent backs and men signed down into pits. You are the god who is supposed to maintain Ma'at, and you are the one man in Egypt who has stood on every rung and seen exactly how little of it is true and how much of it is grain. Moved, counted, withheld, redistributed, the whole shining theology, a method for deciding whose mouth gets fed, and you cannot say any of it. You perform the rite at dawn now, or your priests perform it in your name, the waking of the god, and the god being woken is, ultimately, you. And you let the incense climb, and you hold the gap shut with your whole body. The gap you first saw as a priest, the gap between the order performed and the hunger administered. Except now there is no one above you to keep the secret for. You are the keeper of the last secret in the world, and there is no one to share it with, because everyone below you either believes you are a god or wants to be the next one. You are surrounded, and you are utterly alone. The harem, the wives, the sons. You have just watched what they did to the last god who sat here, with his throat. You eat food someone else has tasted. You sleep behind men you pay to be loyal, knowing loyalty is the most easily moved grain of all. You are building your tomb, the greatest project of your life, as it was the greatest project of your life as a noble. Except now it is a king's tomb, cut by the men of the place of truth. And you of all the kings who ever lived, you know that one season the grain to that village will run late, and the men cutting your eternity will sit down in the dust and shout that they are hungry, and your immortality will stop on a missing sack of emmer. You know it the way no other king could know it, because you carried the chisel, you reign, you build, you war. You hold Ma'at against chaos, for as long as your body will hold anything. And you are praised in language so vast it stops meaning anything. The strong bull, the beloved of the gods, the lord of the two lands, eternal, living forever. You are not going to live forever. You feel it come. The body that climbed out of the gold hills and stood in the chariot's dust, and sat in the hall of 40 scrolls is finishing. The way you once watched a man in the desert simply put down his basket and sit. And as it finishes you find, to your astonishment, that the thing rising in you is not the fear of losing the crown. It is the stone in your mouth, a name, a girl's name, from a village above the cataracts, in a language no one in your court would even recognize. You have not said it in 40 years. You let her pass on a rope to keep all of this, the crown, the beard, the painted pool, the gold, and now all of this is sliding off you like the linen they will soon wrap you in, and the only thing left, the only thing that was ever truly yours and not the system's, is the name you stopped saying. You die saying it. No one hears. A god is not permitted to have a sister on a rope. And then you go into the last room. The same room. The room from the very beginning. Level 10. The judgment. You walk into the dark, and the scale is already hanging there. The jackal-headed god is real here, or real enough, and he takes your heart out of you to weigh it. Because the heart in this world is not the seat of love. It is the seat of the record. Every grain you withheld, every back you broke, every man you signed into the pit, every face you let pass on a rope, all of it written in the meat of your heart. And on the other pan of the scale he sets a single feather, the feather of Ma'at. Order, truth, justice, balance. The whole thing you embodied as a god, reduced to one feather's weight. 42 judges sit in the dark, one for each crime, and you must stand before them and make your denials, the negative confessions, the spell you have been rehearsing your whole life without knowing it. I have not stolen. I have not killed a man. I have not taken grain unjustly. I have not driven cattle from their pasture. I have not caused anyone to weep. I have not made anyone hungry. I have not. You who guarded the full granary beside the starving village. You who let her pass. You stand in the dark and you say, I have not made anyone hungry, and the scale is right there, and the scale does not listen to the words. The scale only weighs the heart. And here is the last thing this world teaches you. The thing every single rank was built to keep you from understanding, until exactly this moment. The feather does not care what you wore. It does not care that you ended as the living god with the double crown and the gold and the painted tomb. It would have weighed the slave's heart on the very same beam, against the very same feather, in the very same dark. The man who broke the rock, and the man who signed him to the rock, come into this one room, stripped of every rank, every title, every sack of grain. And what is left of each of them is a heart and a feather, and the heart is heavy, or it is not. And the slave whose only crime was being counted may walk through into the green fields of forever, while the god who held Ma'at against chaos, with his whole body, watches the beam tip the wrong way, and feels the breath of the thing, with the crocodile's jaws. You spent a lifetime climbing out of the dust toward the one rank that was safe. There was never a rank that was safe. There was only ever this room, and this scale, and this feather, waiting for every one of you the same. Your tomb, meanwhile, your beautiful eternal tomb, the great project of your life, is robbed within a few generations. The order phrase, the grain runs late one time too many. The men who once struck for bread now come into the cliffs at night with copper tools, and they strip the gold from your coffin, and the rings from your bones, and they leave your name on the wall, but they take everything the name was for. And in the centuries after that, even the name goes, scraped, recarved by a later king, forgotten, buried, until you are exactly what the boy on the rope was, a body in the desert, uncounted, Dust. The feather does not care. The river is the same river. It always was. Far to the south, above the cataracts, in the dry season when the cattle are still lying down in the early light, the soldiers come. There is smoke, and there is a line of people roped at the neck, and there is a scribe with a roll of papyrus who counts them, because that is the first thing this world does to a body. It counts it. There is a child in the line. A boy, the right age, with quick hands he does not yet know are quick, and his sister is somewhere ahead, and he has stopped saying her name out loud, because the soldiers laugh at the sound of it, so he says it inside, once, like a stone he keeps in his mouth, so he does not forget he has a tongue. He thinks he knows what is coming. He thinks the worst thing in the world is the rope. He doesn't. Not yet. He has no idea what he just started. The column turns north into the dust, and the dust takes everyone the same, and the only thing any of them are climbing toward, slave or scribe or priest or vizier or god, is a feather, in the dark, that does not care. The cycle continues.